Good evening and welcome. Tonight we're going a long way back, more than 3,000 years, to one ordinary day, beside the oldest road in the world. Not a road of stone, a road of water, the river Nile. But before we begin, there is something you should know. You don't need to remember any of this. There will be no test, no names to keep, no dates, nothing to hold on to. If you drift off in the middle of a sentence, that isn't a failure. That's the whole idea. The story will keep going without you, quiet as the river, and if you surface later and still hear my voice, you can simply drift again. And if nights like this help you, there's a new story here every week. But that's a thought for tomorrow. Tonight, nothing at all is asked of you. So settle into your pillow. Let the blanket be heavy. Let your eyes close whenever they would like to. Just listen and let go. Our story begins in the dark, on a flat mud roof, under more stars than you have ever seen. It is long before dawn, in a small village on the banks of the Nile. The year does not matter much. Somewhere in the long, warm middle of Egypt's history, in the reign of a king whose name the village rarely bothers with, a good time for the river, a good time for sleep. Up on the flat roof of a small mud brick house, a man is sleeping on a woven reed mat, under a single length of linen. His name is Back. He is neither young nor old. His hands are dark and strong from the water and the nets, and there is a little gray now in his hair, though under this much starlight you could not tell. In the hot months, everyone sleeps on the roofs. The houses hold the day's heat long into the night, close and still, but up here the air moves and the whole village lies open to the sky. If you could rise a little way above it, you would see them all, roof after flat roof, family after family, laid out under the stars like boats moored along a quiet shore. And above them, the stars themselves, so many. The sky here is not the thin, washed sky of a city. It is deep and crowded, and close enough that a child could believe he might gather a handful. A pale band of them spills straight overhead, from one edge of the world to the other. The old people say it is a great river up there too, a Nile in the sky, that the sun sails along by day and the stars by night. Bach has never been sure whether he believes that, but he has looked up at it every warm night of his life, and it has never once let him down. Below the roofs, past the last houses, the real river is moving in the dark. You cannot see it yet, but you can hear it if you are still. And Back, half asleep, is always still. A low, endless, breathing sound. Water sliding past reeds. The small slap of the current against the mud bank. The creak of a moored boat shifting on its rope. And under all of it, that great soft hush, the sound the Nile has made every night for longer than there have been villages to hear it. The river has been flowing like that all night. It will flow like that for 1,000 years. Back stirs and half wakes, the way he always does at this hour, without anyone calling him. He does not open his eyes right away. He simply lies there listening and lets the sounds tell him where he is. The river, low and steady. The water is calm tonight. A dog somewhere across the village, asking a question and getting no answer. The soft breathing of his family around him on the roof. His wife near, and the children in a warm tangle a little beyond. And curled against his side where she has claimed her place, the cat. She is a small gray cat with a white chest, and she owns this family completely, in the calm and total way that cats owned all of Egypt. In the daytime, she keeps the grain safe from mice and the house safe from snakes, and for this she is honored. But at night she simply sleeps against Bak's ribs, rising and falling with his breath, and asks for nothing. He can feel the small engine of her, purring in her sleep, a sound almost too low to hear. He opens his eyes. Overhead, the stars. He lies and looks at them for a while, in no hurry at all. There is time. There is always time in this hour. The morning belongs to no one yet. Then quietly, so as not to wake the children, he sits up. The linen slides from his shoulders. The night air is cool and kind on his skin. The one cool hour, before the sun climbs up and lays its great warm hand over everything. He sits at the edge of the roof with his feet on the warm mud and looks out over the sleeping village toward the river he cannot yet see. The rooftops are pale shapes in the starlight. Here and there, the dark line of a palm rises above them, its fronds hanging still. There is no wind. There is only the river breathing, and the last of the night, and far off, faint as a thought, the first gray suggestion that the sky in the east is thinking about morning. Bak is a fisherman, as his father was, and his father before him. He does not need a horn or a bell to wake him. The river wakes him. The fish keep their own hours, and a man who would eat must keep them too. And so, without complaint, without hurry, he rises into the last of the dark, the way he has risen 10,000 mornings, the way the men of this village have risen since before anyone can remember. He climbs down the short wooden ladder from the roof into the dark house below, one hand on the cool mud wall. And so the day begins, the way it always begins, with the river. There is nothing to plan. The day is the same shape as every day. And this, in a world that can be as uncertain as anyone's, is a kind of quiet wealth. The river will be there. The nets are where he left them. The morning will unfold in its old order, one slow task and then the next. And there is a deep and simple comfort in that which the great and busy people of the world, up in their painted halls, do not always get to feel. This is the oldest hour and the softest. Not quite night anymore, not yet morning. The 1 hour that belongs to no task and no master, when even the busiest land in the world lies down and is still. The great temples far off downriver stand dark and cold, their stone forests waiting for the sun. The fine houses of the officials, with their painted walls and their pools and their gardens, are shuttered and quiet. The king himself, wherever he sleeps, sleeps now, and dreams whatever kings dream, and is, for these few dark hours, no different from a fisherman on a mat. The whole land breathes slowly, together, in the dark. Rich and poor, near and far, all of them laid down under the same stars. All of them, for this little while, simply asleep. Bak sits a while longer at the edge of the roof, in no hurry to begin, and lets the last of the sleep drain slowly out of him. There is a particular pleasure in this, in being awake and unhurried, while the world still sleeps. The air is cool, the stars are bright. Nothing yet demands anything of him. He could almost lie back down. Some mornings he does for a little while, and no harm comes of it, and the fish forgive him, and the day is only a little shorter and no worse for it. He thinks in the loose and driftless way of a man not yet fully awake, of nothing much. Of the water level, which is good this year, of a tear in the net he must mend before it grows, of his eldest who is getting old enough now to come out on the boat, and who wants to, badly, and asks every few days, and will be told yes soon, but not quite yet. Small thoughts, the small, worn, comfortable furniture of an ordinary mind at rest. Nothing sharp, nothing that pulls, just the quiet turning over of a life that fits its owner well, like a much-worn tool worn smooth to the hand. Below him in the dark, the village holds its shape. He knows every house of it without seeing them. The potter's with the kiln that smokes in the afternoons. The house of the old weaver, whose loom he can hear on quiet mornings. The well in the little open space, where the women gather at dawn and the day's news is passed from mouth to mouth. The threshing floor at the edge of the fields. The path down to the landing where the boats are drawn up. A small world complete in itself, no bigger than a man could walk across before he had properly woken, and inside it, everything a life needs. It is enough. It has always been enough. A breath of wind comes off the water, cool and river-smelling, and stirs the fronds of the palms, and passes. The stars wheel their slow, imperceptible fraction toward the west. The pale band of them overhead, the river in the sky, glows on, faint and enormous, the way it has glowed over every fisherman who ever sat on a roof at this hour, in this land, since the first of them. And back, without any particular thought about it, feels the old quiet gladness of being one more in that long, unbroken line. Nothing special, nothing marked, just one more man rising in the dark to go down to the river, the way it has always been done, the way he trusts it always will be. Somewhere out in the dark, a heron lifts from the reeds with a slow, heavy beat of wings and settles again, and the village sleeps on. Inside, the house is close and dark and smells of home, of last night's bread, of dried river mud, of the sweet smoke of a lamp long out, of the reed baskets stacked against the wall. Back moves through it without a lamp. He knows this house by touch, every wall and jar and doorway, the way you know the shape of your own hand. His feet find the cool, packed earth floor, swept smooth by his wife each evening. He takes up a heel of yesterday's bread from the covered bowl and eats it slowly, standing in the dark, and drinks a mouthful of water from the tall, porous jar by the door, where the water keeps cool all night by its own slow breathing through the clay. He gathers his things, his net folded and coiled and heavy, that he mended by lamplight 3 evenings ago, a short length of line, a woven basket for the catch, a wide linen cloth to keep the sun off later, when the sun remembers to be cruel. That is all. A fisherman does not need much. The river provides the rest. Then out through the low doorway, ducking his head, into the lane. The village is a small huddle of flat-roofed houses, packed close along a rise above the flood line, their mud walls still warm from yesterday. The lanes between them are narrow and winding, and full of soft dust that has not yet been stirred by the day. Nothing moves. A goat, penned beside a doorway, lifts its head and considers him, and decides he is not worth standing up for, and lays its chin back down. Somewhere a baby makes one small sound and is hushed. He walks down through the sleeping village toward the river, and the sound of the water grows. And now at last, at the end of the lane, past the last house, past a stand of dark palms, the Nile. It lies before him, wide and gray and calm in the last of the starlight, so still along the margins that the fading stars lie doubled on its surface. A low mist hangs over it, waist high, soft as breath, drifting slowly downstream. The far bank is only a suggestion, a darker line under a paling sky. On this side, a fringe of tall papyrus and reeds stands black and motionless against the water, their feathered heads perfectly still, waiting like everything else for the day. Bach stands a moment at the edge, as he always does, not planning, just being there, at the river, in the one cool hour, while it is still his and the heron's. He breathes the smell of it, green water, wet mud, crushed reed, the faint fish smell of the margins, the smell of his whole life. His father stood here, his father's father. The river has carried all of them and fed all of them, and it does not so much as notice. And there is no unkindness in that. The river is simply large and old and busy being the river. His boat waits where he left it, drawn up on the mud among the reeds. It is a small skiff, made of bundles of papyrus stalks bound tightly together with rope, light enough for one man to lift, curved up gently at each end. Half the village travels the river in boats like this. The poor man's boat, the fisherman's boat, the boat you can make yourself from the marsh if you are patient and your hands are clever. It has carried back for years. It sits low and trusts the water. It asks for nothing but that you do not stand up suddenly and insult it. He lays his net and basket inside and sets his shoulder to the stern and slides it hissing down the wet mud into the shallows. The cool water closes around his feet and ankles, and it is the best feeling of the whole day, that first step into the river before the heat, clean and cold and alive. He steadies the skiff and steps in, low and careful, and settles himself and takes up the long, thin pole. For a moment he simply floats there, a few strokes out from the bank, and lets the river hold him. The mist curls around the boat. The reeds slide by, close enough to touch. The current turns him gently, patiently, the way the current turns everything given to it, and he does not fight it. He lets it swing the bow, and then, with one slow push of the pole against the soft bottom, he sends the little boat gliding out onto the wide gray water. He is not alone on the river, though it feels that way. Here and there along the wide gray water, other boats are putting out. Other men from other villages, small dark shapes in the mist, each one bent to his own poling, each one bound for his own stretch of water, learn from his own father. They do not call to one another. It is too early and too quiet, and there is nothing to say that the river does not already say. But now and then 2 boats pass within hailing distance, and the men lift a hand, once, in the old silent greeting of people who share a river and an hour and a way of life, and that is enough. Then each goes on, into the mist, to his own morning. The boat he stands in is a small marvel, though he never thinks of it that way. It is only his boat. But there is nothing in it that did not grow in the marsh. The papyrus that forms the hull, cut green and bound tight and left to dry until the bundles are light and firm and shed the water. The rope that binds it, twisted from the same plant. Even the pole in his hands is the length of it or of some other reed, cut and dried and true. A man with patience and a bronze knife can walk down to the marsh with nothing and come back, in a season, with a boat. And so the poorest fishermen in the land can put out on the river as freely as the richest. For the river gives away, for nothing, the very thing you need to travel it. There is a kind of fairness in that which Bach has never named, but has always felt. The light comes up slowly over the water. First, the sky in the east goes from black to gray to a pale, clean green, the color of a reed held up to the light. Then a flush of rose along the rim of the hills. The stars fade one by one, not all at once but softly, the bright ones lingering longest, until only the morning star is left, low and white and steady over the eastern desert, and then even that is gone, dissolved into the growing day. The mist on the water begins to thin and lift and drift, tearing slowly into ragged trailing shapes, and through the gaps the far bank shows itself, a green line of reeds, a fringe of palms, the low mud houses of another village, waking to the same morning. And still Back is in no hurry. He lets the current turn the boat and rights it with a lazy push and drifts and watches the day come. There will be time for the nets. There is always time. The best fishing is a little later anyway, when the sun has warmed the shallows and the fish come up to feed. And a wise man does not fight the river's clock, but keeps it. So he floats and waits and lets the morning arrive at its own pace, which is the only pace the river knows. And so the morning goes on slowly out on the quiet river. There is no hurry in it. There never is. If your eyes are heavy already, let them close. The river will carry the boat whether anyone is watching or not, and the fish will keep their own slow appointment. And nothing out here needs a single thing from you at all. Out on the open water, the world is very simple. There is the river, wide and pale and slowly brightening. There is the sky, going from gray to the faint green gold of coming dawn. There is the black fringe of reeds along both banks, and the mist thinning over the surface, and the small sounds of the boat, the drip of the pole, the lap of water on the papyrus hull, the creak of the bundles taking the strain. And there is Back, poling slowly along the margin where the fish like to feed, in no more hurry than the river itself. He knows this stretch of water the way a farmer knows his field. He knows where the bottom shelves and where it drops away dark and deep. He knows the quiet bay behind the reed island where the fish gather in the cool of the morning, out of the main current. He knows without knowing how he knows the small signs, a ring on the surface, a flick of silver, a certain stillness. That mean the fish are there. His father taught him, and the river taught him over so many mornings that the knowing has sunk below thought into his hands and his eyes. He poles into the shallow bay and lets the boat drift to a stop and grows still. Then he takes up the net. It is a cast net, weighted round its edge with small baked clay sinkers, and he gathers it now in the old practiced way, a loop over the arm, the leaded edge hanging free, the whole thing balanced and ready. He has done this so many times that his body does it without him. He rises to a crouch, feet spread, the boat rocking gently and forgiving him for it, and he waits. He watches the water. He is looking for the sign. There, a soft dimpling of the surface near the reeds. The fish are feeding. He swings and casts. The net leaves his hands and opens as it flies, a wide-spreading circle, blooming outward against the pale sky for one held moment, and then falling all at once, with a soft sound like rain, onto the water, and sinking, its leaded edge drawing it down, and closed around whatever lay beneath. And then he waits again. This is most of fishing, the waiting. He lets the net settle. He lets the river forgive the small disturbance. Around him the morning goes on brightening, and a heron on the far reeds folds and unfolds one leg, in no more hurry than he is. Then slowly, hand over hand, he draws the line, gathering the net back up from the deep, and the weight of it tells him before he sees a good cast. He lifts it dripping over the side, and there in its wet folds, catching the first real light of the day, are the fish. Silver and gray and dark-backed, a good handful of them, cool and gleaming and smelling of the river. He tips them into the wet basket, where they settle and are still. And that is the morning, not a battle, not a triumph, just the net and the water and the waiting, and now and then the small silver gift the river chooses to give. He pulls a little further along and casts again and waits again. The river is never quite the same water twice, and yet it is always the river. Bach has thought about this in the slow way a man thinks about things out on the water, without words, without ever reaching a conclusion, which is the best way to think about the deep things. The water sliding past his boat now will be far downstream by evening, gone on its long journey to the great green sea he has heard of and will never see. And behind it comes more water, and behind that more, an endless coming on out of the south, out of the far unknown lands where the old people say the river is born. No one quite knows how or where. It never stops. It never runs dry. In the whole memory of the whole land, no one has ever gone down to the bank and found the river simply not there. It comes and comes and comes, patient and faithful and inexhaustible. It has fed and carried and washed every soul who ever lived in this long green country. And it will do the same for every soul yet to come, long after Bach and his boat and his net are quiet and forgotten. There is no fear in the thought. There is only a great, cool, settling comfort in it, in being a small, warm creature for a little while beside something so vast and so kind and so unhurried, and letting it hold you up and going about your small day upon it, trusting it to be there, as it always has been, as it always will be. A soft wind comes up the river from the north, cool off the distant sea, and ruffles the water into 1,000 small blue scales, and leans the reeds all one way and passes on. It is the wind that fills the sails of the boats going upstream, this north wind, for the river runs one way and the wind blows the other, and so a boat may drift down on the current and sail back up on the breeze, and the whole long land is stitched together, up and down, by this one lucky arrangement of water and air, as though the country were made to be traveled, made to be easy, made to carry its people gently back and forth along its single shining road. Bach feels the wind on his wet arms and is glad of it. It cools the climbing heat. It smells of the marsh and the open water. It is the same wind that has come up the river every morning of his life, and it asks nothing, and it gives everything, and he turns his face to it a moment and closes his eyes and simply feels it, and then opens them and gathers the net and casts again. There is a rhythm to it, and the rhythm is the best part. The gather, the crouch, the watch, the cast, the soft fall of the net like rain, the wait, the slow draw of the line, then again, and again. His breath falls into it, or perhaps it falls into his breath. After so many years, there is no telling which follows which. The boat rocks. The sun lifts clear of the eastern hills at last, and lays a road of beaten gold straight across the water toward him, so bright he has to look away, and the mist burns off, and the river turns from gray to green to blue, and the day is truly here, but gently this morning, kindly, the heat still hours away. And if you were drifting along in a boat nearby, and you can if you like, the river is wide and there is room, and no one would mind. You would feel the whole restless day you left on shore begin to loosen out here. There is nothing to decide on the water. There is only the next cast and the patience between. The mind, given nothing to chew on, quietly lets go, the way a fist unclenches when it forgets what it was holding. This is a thing the fishermen know and the busy people forget, that some of the best work in the world is the work that asks almost nothing of you and gives you back to yourself while you do it. The river gives many kinds of fish, and back knows them all, the way you know old neighbors. The broad silver ones that come in schools and fill the net in a good cast. The long dark ones that lie deep and are cleverer and must be coaxed. The little bright darting ones the children love to catch by hand in the shallows, more for the game than the eating. Some he keeps and some he slips back over the side, too small to grow and be caught another year. For a fisherman who takes everything his father taught him soon has an empty river, and the river remembers. So he chooses, as he draws each net, with the unhurried judgment of long practice. And the small ones go back with a flick and a splash, and swim down and are gone, and the river keeps its balance, and so does he. Between the casts there is nothing to do but be, and it is in these gaps that the morning does its quiet work on a man. The mind which on land is always busy, always reaching, always turning something over, always a little ahead of itself or a little behind, out here simply slows and stops and rests. There is the sun on the shoulders, warm but not yet fierce. There is the small rock of the boat. There is the wide sheet of the water, blue now, moving with 1,000 small lights. There is the heron, still on its reed, a gray patience matching his own. And there is the breath, coming and going, slow and even, in time with the lap of the water on the hull. A person could sit like this for an hour and not know it had passed. A person could sit like this and slowly forget his own name, and be none the worse, and perhaps a little the better, for the forgetting. The heron he has been watching all morning finally moves. For a long time it has stood in the shallows near the reeds, one leg folded, utterly still, a gray statue of itself. Then, so slowly that the eye can barely catch the moment, it lowers its long neck and dips it into the water and lifts its head again with a small silver fish held crosswise in its bill. It works the fish around gently and takes it down, and then the heron simply stands again and folds its leg and returns to its gray waiting, as though nothing had happened, as though it had all the time in the world, which out here it does. They both do. It is a good way to fish, the heron's way. Bach has learned much of what he knows from watching it. The gold road the sun laid across the water has narrowed and paled as the sun climbed, and now it is only a wide scatter of broken light, dancing, too bright to look at straight. The last of the mist is long gone. The far bank stands clear and green in the full morning light. A file of white birds crosses the sky, high up, heading down river, and their faint calls come down thin and clear and then fade. And Bach, with a good weight of silver already settling in the wet basket, makes one more cast and watches the net bloom and fall like slow rain, and waits in the deep contentment of a man whose morning has gone well and asks for nothing more. And so the morning goes on, slowly, out on the bright water, the net rising and falling, the heron keeping its watch, the gold road lying quiet across the river. There is nothing here you need to follow, only a man and a boat in the oldest river in the world, doing together what they have always done, Whether the sun is up or the stars are, whether anyone is listening or not. By the time the basket has a good weight of fish in it, the sun has climbed a hand's breadth up the sky, and back turns the little boat toward the marshes. He does not go straight home. There is one more part of the morning, and it is the part he loves, though he would never say so aloud. He poles the skiff off the open river and in among the reeds, into the great green world of the marsh. And it is another country in there. On the open river, the sky is everything, wide and high and bright. But here among the papyrus, the world closes gently in and turns green and cool and dim. The papyrus stands taller than a man, taller than 3 men, a whole forest of it, each stalk smooth and green and rising to a soft feathered head far overhead. And the light that comes down through those 1,000 feathered heads is green and moving and kind. The water here is still and dark and clear, and the boat slides through it without a sound, parting the floating leaves. It is the busiest quiet place in all of Egypt, the marsh. It looks still. It is anything but. Everywhere life. Ducks, hundreds of them, thousands in the hidden pools, muttering and dabbling and now and then lifting in a soft, loose drift and settling again. Geese somewhere, complaining softly about nothing. A kingfisher, a spark of impossible blue, waiting on a bent reed, so still it might be painted there, and then gone in a blue streak and a small splash. Herons standing like gray priests in the shallows, and once sliding across a patch of open water ahead of the boat and slipping quietly into the reeds, the smooth dark back of some river creature going about its own mourning, no more troubled by him than he is by it. The men of the village come here to fowl in the marshes sometimes, in the cool of the morning, not back today, but others, poling their skiffs silently into the reeds, waiting motionless in the green cover, patient as the herons they share the water with. It is old work and quiet and skilled, and the great lords love it too. They have themselves painted on the walls of their tombs, standing in just such a skiff, in just such a marsh, a throwing stick raised, the ducks bursting up all around them, a favorite cat sometimes painted at their feet retrieving the catch, and the beloved wife beside them, and the whole green world rendered in careful color, because it is a thing worth taking into the next life. This, a morning in the marsh, the reeds, the birds, the light on the water. Even the greatest of them, given a wall and a lifetime to fill it, chose to be remembered here doing this. There is no better praise of the marsh than that. Among all this, the blue lotus. They lie open on the still water in the pools between the reeds, wide and pale blue and gold-hearted, floating on their round green leaves, turning their faces up to the patches of sky. Their scent hangs over the water, sweet and cool and clean, the most loved smell in all of Egypt. The flower the great ladies wear at their feasts, the flower painted on the walls of the finest houses. And here it is, growing wild and free by the thousand, for anyone poling a reed boat through the morning. Bach reaches out as he passes and picks one, without quite deciding to, and lays it in the bow. He will take it home to his wife. He does this most mornings. She always smiles and puts it in a cup of water, and by evening it has closed for the night, the way the lotus does, folding its blue petals to sleep and sinking a little toward the water, to open again with the sun. His children love to watch it, a flower that sleeps and wakes like a person. There are worse things to bring home than that. He gathers a few stems of the tall papyrus too, cutting them low with a short bronze knife. For papyrus is not only beautiful, it is everything. From it, the village makes its boats, and its mats, and its baskets, and its sandals, and the sheets of pale writing paper the scribes use in the temples, though Back has never held one of those. The pith of the stem can be eaten, the roots can be chewed. A plant that gives you your boat, your bed, your basket, your sandal, your paper and your dinner, growing free from the mud by the mile. It is no wonder the whole land loves it. Its tall, feathered heads are carved at the tops of temple columns. The greatest halls in Egypt are stone forests, pretending to be this. He works his way slowly through the green channels, the boat whispering through the leaves, gathering what the marsh gives, in no hurry, letting the cool, dim green quiet of it settle over him. Dragonflies stitch the air. A soft, warm wind moves the high feathered heads far overhead, and they lean all together and sigh and lean back, a slow, enormous, gentle sound, like the marsh itself breathing in its sleep. Deeper in, the channels grow narrow and secret, and the boat must be poled with care, nosing between the tall green stalks that lean in part and close again behind. It is cool in here, and dim, and the sounds change. The open river's wide hush gives way to smaller, closer sounds. The drip of water from the pole, the whisper of the hull through the leaves, the plink of a frog somewhere near, the sudden whir of a bird flushed from cover and gone before it is seen. Light falls in long green shafts through gaps in the papyrus overhead, and moves as the heads sway, so that the whole green world flickers gently, like the bottom of a shallow, sunlit pool. A man could lose himself in here, in the good way, could pole slowly through the green channels all morning and come out the other side rested, as though he had slept. The marsh has fed and clothed and carried the people of this land since before anyone can remember, and it asks nothing in return but that you come and take. There are eggs to be found in the reeds, if a man wants them, and the sweet white pith of the young papyrus, good to chew. There are the roots of the lotus, and its round seed pods, both good to eat. There are fish in the still pools, and birds beyond counting. In the hungry years long ago, the old people say, it was the marsh that kept the villages alive when the fields failed. The marsh that never fails, green and wet and generous, no matter what the river does. And so it is loved, and a little feared, and treated with the quiet respect owed to a thing that is older and larger and more patient than any village, and will be here, green and humming with life, long after the village is dust. Back poles into a wide, still pool, ringed round with reeds, roofed with sky, and lets the boat drift to a stop, and simply rests a while in the middle of it. The lotus lies open all around him. The water is black and clear and still, and doubles the reeds and doubles the sky, so that the boat seems to hang in a green-blue nowhere, between two worlds. A pair of ducks paddle out from the reeds, unhurried, unafraid, trailing their small silver wakes, and cross the pool, and vanish into the reeds on the far side. A dragonfly lands on the curved prow of the boat, blue and glass-winged, rests a moment and lifts away. High overhead, the feathered heads of the papyrus lean in the warm wind, all together, and sigh and lean back. And nothing else happens at all for a long, green, breathing while, and nothing else needs to. And so the morning goes on, slowly in the green shade of the reeds. There is nothing to tell, in here, only the lotus turning up its face and the boat sliding through the still water, and the wind combing the tops of the papyrus far above. If you have drifted off among the reeds and lost the thread, good. The marsh keeps no track of time, and neither tonight need you. Let the green quiet close over you the way it closes over the boat. Then with his basket heavy and a lotus in the bow, back turns for home, out of the green world, back onto the bright river and toward the village, and the smoke of the morning fires beginning to rise. The village is awake now, and the day is warming toward its full weight as Back draws the little boat up the mud bank into the reeds and steps back onto the land. He carries the basket of fish up through the lanes, and the village greets him as he passes, in the small, worn, comfortable way of a place where everyone has known everyone since before they can remember. A neighbor mending a wall with fresh mud lifts a gray hand. A woman drawing water at the well straightens and asks after the morning's catch. Children run past on some enormous, urgent errand of their own and are gone. From every doorway now comes the smell of the morning meal, of baking bread, of onions, of fish laid on the coals, braiding together up and down the lane into one warm smell that means home and morning and enough. His own doorway, he ducks under the low lintel into the cool dim of the house. Inside, the morning is in full and gentle motion. His wife is at the small clay oven in the corner of the yard, baking the day's bread, flat round loaves slapped onto the hot inner wall of the oven, where they cling and blister and brown. The smell of it fills the house. The youngest child sits in a patch of doorway sun, gravely feeding a crumb to the gray cat, who accepts it as her due. An older child is grinding grain on a flat stone, back and forth, back and forth. The soft, steady rasp of it a sound as old as bread itself. He sets down the fish, and there is a small, quiet gladness at the weight of the basket, enough for the family and enough left over to trade at the landing for what the river cannot give, for a jar of oil, a length of linen, a few beads, a new bronze fish hook. This is how the village lives. Everyone makes the one thing their hands know and carries it down to the others and carries home what they need. The potter's cool water jars, the weaver's linen, the fisherman's silver morning catch. A whole world turning quietly on the small daily kindness of I have this and you have that. There are no coins in this world, or almost none. A man does not pay, he trades, weighing a basket of fish against a jar of oil by long custom and a little friendly haggling, and both walk away content, and the thing itself, the fish and the oil, passes from the hand that made it to the hand that needs it, warm and direct, the way it has always been. Down at the landing on a busy morning, it is a slow, cheerful murmur of it. Grain for fish, linen for pots, dates for a length of rope, 100 small fair exchanges, and under them all the river that gave every one of the traded things in the first place slides by unhurried, keeping its own counsel. The village has no great wealth and wants none it cannot picture. A man measures his riches in plain and holdable things: a sound boat, a good net, a full grain jar, a wife and children in health, a roof that keeps the sun off and lets the cool night in. These are enough, and a man who has them is, by the only reckoning that reaches the villages, a rich man, though he will never in his life see the inside of a great house or hold a piece of gold. Back has these things. He has never thought to want much past them, the wanting of more, The great restless reaching after this and that is a fever of the towns and the temples and the courts, and it does not much trouble the river villages, where the days are full and the same and enough, and a man can lie down at night with nothing owed and nothing burning, and simply, easily sleep. And then the family sits in the shade of the yard wall and eats. Bread, warm and coarse and good, torn by hand, onions, sweet and sharp, a little dried fish, dates and a few figs, and beer, thick, soft, mild village beer, more like a bread than a drink, poured from a tall jar, the everyday drink of everyone in Egypt from the fisherman to the king, gentle enough that the children have their small share. They eat slowly and talk of small things or of nothing, and the cat sits among them, radiating patient expectation, and the sun climbs, and the shade shrinks back against the wall. For now the great heat comes. By midday the sun stands directly overhead and lays its full weight on the land, and the whole village wisely stops. This is not a place that fights the sun. It is far too old and too clever for that. Work halts. The lanes empty. People withdraw into the deep shade of the houses, onto the cool mud floors, out of the white blaze of noon. The animals lie flat in whatever shadow they can find. Even the river seems to slow, glaring silver and still under the vertical sun, and the birds fall silent, and a great warm hush settles over everything, thick as honey. Back lies down on the cool floor in the dim of the house, in the deepest shade, and rests. He does not quite sleep. It is the shopkeeper's sleep, the fisherman's sleep, the shallow warm doze of a man with one ear still open. But it is deep enough. The cat finds him and arranges herself against his side, and begins at once to purr. Through the doorway comes the white glare of noon and the enormous silence of the heat. A fly drones somewhere and gives up. Far off, the river whispers on, the one thing that never rests. The bread is the heart of it all. Everything in the village turns, in the end, around bread. The grain is grown in the black soil the river leaves behind when the flood pulls back each year. It is cut and threshed on the threshing floor, and winnowed in the wind, and ground on the flat stone into coarse flour, and mixed with water, and baked. And it is bread, and bread is life, so plainly and completely that the two words are almost the same word. A man's wages when he works for another are paid in it, in bread and in beer, which is only bread again, in another form. A day's honest work is so many loaves and so many jars. The whole land is fed, from the fisherman to the king, on the same dark good bread, made the same way it has been made since the first field was planted by the first river. And there is something steadying in that, in eating the same thing your father ate and his father before him. Morning after morning, year upon year, the taste of it a thread running back unbroken through all the generations to the very beginning. And so they eat in the shade of the yard wall, slowly in the good tiredness that comes after a morning's work. There is no rush to the meal. The talk drifts and stops and starts again. One child has a small triumph to report, some matter of enormous importance concerning a beetle, and is listened to with grave attention. The gray cat makes her slow diplomatic rounds of the seated family, and is given a scrap here and a scrap there, and settles at last against the youngest, who has fallen half asleep sitting up, a crust still in one loose hand. Back's wife tells some small thread of village news carried back from the well that morning. A berth, a boat mended, a quarrel between two neighbors already half forgotten. Nothing urgent, nothing that must be decided or done. Only the small, warm, murmuring business of a family at rest together in the middle of an ordinary day. Then the meal is done, and the plates cleared, and the great heat comes down in earnest, and one by one they withdraw into the deep shade to wait it out. The house is cool and dim inside, its thick mud walls holding out the blaze. The cool of the floor comes up through the reed mat and through the linen and into the tired body like water into dry ground. Outside, the white light hammers down on the empty lanes, and the village lies as still as a village in a painting. Not a soul moving, not a sound, but the drone of a single fly, and far off, always the river. Back lies on his back with his arm over his eyes and lets the heat press him down into the floor, heavier and heavier, and does not fight it, and would not if he could, because this heavy, hollow, hushed midday stillness is one of the oldest comforts his country has to give, and he has been learning how to give himself up to it since before he could walk. And so the day goes on, slowly, the bread eaten, the shade deep, the whole village lying still under the great warm hand of the sun. There is nothing to do in this hour but be still, and Bach is good at that. If you have drifted, drift on. Nothing will happen for a long, warm while. The heat asks only one thing of anyone, and it is the easiest thing in the world to give, to lie down and let it pass. The great heat breaks slowly, the way it always does, easing by small degrees as the sun begins its long slide down the western sky, and one by one the village comes back to life. Bach wakes from his doze to find the light gone golden and long, and the worst of the heat behind him, and the afternoon, that easy, golden, unhurried afternoon, spread out ahead like a gift. He does not go back out on the water. The morning's fishing is done. The afternoon is for the small mending work that stitches a life together, and he does it in the shade of the yard, or down by the water's edge, in no hurry at all. First, the net. He spreads it out across his knees and works along its length, searching out the small tears the fish and the reeds in the river have made, and mending each one with a bone needle and a length of twisted twine. It is slow, quiet, endless work. A net is never truly finished being mended, and it is the kind of work that leaves the mind free to wander where it likes. His fingers know it without him. He knots and draws tight and moves on and knots again. Nearby, one of his children watches and is handed a corner and shown the knot and gets it wrong and is shown again, patiently, the way Bach's own father showed him, the way the knot has been handed down the river of years from hand to hand to hand. All around him the small crafts of the village take up their afternoon hum. At his wheel the potter sits and turns, a lump of river clay rising under his wet hands into the shape of a jar, smooth and swelling and true, the wheel spinning slow beneath, the shape growing as if by its own will out of the mud of the same river that grows the reeds and the grain and the lotus. From that clay comes everything the village holds its life in. The tall, porous water jars that keep the water cool, the bowls, the cups, the great storage vessels for the grain. Nearby, the old weaver works her loom in the shade, the shuttle passing back and forth, the linen growing thread by thread, linen from flax grown in the black soil, spun and woven into the cool white cloth that everyone in this hot land wears, from the fisherman's simple kilt to the fine pleated robes of the great. Everywhere a person looks, the same quiet truth. The river gives the mud and the flax and the reed, and the patient hands of the village turn them slowly into a life. Nothing here comes from far away. Almost everything comes from within a morning's walk, out of the river and the fields and the marsh, shaped by hands that learned the shaping from hands that learned it before them. Down beyond the houses, at the edge of the fields, a neighbor is working the shadoof, the long counterweighted pole that lifts water from the river to the garden, dipping and rising, with a slow creak and a soft splash each time the bucket comes up brimming and is swung across to pour into the channels that feed the onions and the beans and the little green rose. It is the sound of every afternoon, the creak, the splash, the trickle of water running out along the earth to the roots. Dip and rise and pour. Dip and rise and pour. A man could fall asleep to it, and men often have. The village breathes its slow afternoon breath all around him. The potter's wheel turns somewhere, with a low, steady hum. Two old men sit in a doorway, not talking, which is its own kind of conversation, one of them slowly turning a string of beads. A woman spreads wet linen on the warm roof to dry, white against the blue. Geese complain their way down the lane and are shooed. The smell of the river drifts up, and the smell of dust settling in, faint and sweet from a cup in a cool corner of the house, the smell of the closing lotus. And the light goes richer and lower and more golden by the hour, until it lies along the tops of the mud walls like something poured, and every small thing, a jar, a palm frond, a child's turned cheek, is edged and softened with gold. There is a game, too, when the mending is done. Back takes down a worn wooden board, marked into small squares, and a handful of little playing pieces, and he and his neighbor sit in the last of the sun and play the game that everyone in Egypt plays. The game of moving your pieces along the squares, from this world toward the next, past the good squares and the tricky ones. A game of a little luck and a little cunning, played the same way in the fisherman's dust as in the palace of the king. They play slowly, with long, comfortable pauses, and argue mildly about a move, and laugh, and the pieces click softly on the board, and neither much minds who wins. The garden by the river is the shaduf's whole reason, and it is worth walking down to see in the cool of the going day. It is not large, a few square strips of dark earth, coaxed green in the endless sun by water lifted bucket by bucket from the river all through the growing season. But it is a small miracle all the same. This green in the brown, wrung out of the desert's edge by patience and a long pole and a counterweight of Nile mud. Onions grow there, and garlic, and beans, and the broad green leaves of melons trailing along the ground, and tall stalks of something going to seed. A boy walks the little channels barefoot, closing one with a heel of mud and opening the next, sending the lifted water where it is wanted row by row, the way it has been sent since the first garden. Without the river, none of it. Without the daily lifting, none of it. The whole green patch is a thing made by hand, one bucket at a time, and it feeds the family through the year, and the family tends it in return, and neither could do without the other, and both bow, in the end, to the river. There is time in the afternoon, too, for the small idlenesses that make a life feel like a life. Bach sits with his back against the warm wall and does nothing in particular for a while, and it is no crime. He watches his children at their games in the lane, some running, chasing business, and some game with a ball of rags, and some clapping and singing game the little ones play. The same rhymes children have chanted in these lanes for 1,000 years, half of them meaning nothing at all of them somehow exactly right. He watches his wife string dried fish on a line to keep. He watches a neighbor's donkey stand in the shade and think its long, slow donkey thoughts. He is not bored. A man who has fished all morning on a wide, quiet river does not easily grow bored of simply sitting in the gold light, watching his own small world go about its evening. There is a fullness in it that the restless never quite reach, and the light keeps deepening and lowering and going more golden by the quarter hour until it slants in long and level under the palms and lays a warm hand along everything it touches. The mud walls glow. The dust in the lane hangs gold in the low light where the children have stirred it. The river, glimpsed between the houses, has gone from blue to a burnished, hammered gold, moving slow and bright toward the sea it will not reach for 100 miles yet. The heat is a memory now, and the cool coming on is gentle and welcome, and the whole village seems to let out a long, slow breath together and lean without hurry toward the evening and the meal and the dark and the sleep at the far quiet end of the day. And so the afternoon goes on, slowly, in the long gold light. The net mended, the shaduf creaking, the little pieces clicking on the board. There is nothing here that needs following. Only a village easing through the best hour of its day, in no hurry to reach the evening, though the evening is coming softly, the way it always does. If you have drifted, stay drifted. The afternoon will hold and hold and hold. And now the day gives its last and finest gift, which it saves, as the wise do, for the very end. The sun, low and huge and gone from white to deep gold to burning red, sinks toward the desert hills that stand along the western edge of the world, beyond the fields, beyond the last green, where the black soil ends and the red land begins. Bach walks down to the river to watch it, as he does most evenings. Half the village drifts down too, in twos and threes, their work done, to stand or sit along the bank in the cooling air and watch the day end over the water. It is the hour when the whole village exhales. And the river gives the sunset back, doubled. The Nile lies still now in the evening calm, and it takes the burning sky and holds it, all that red and gold and rose, laid out flat and shining on the water, from the near bank to the far, so that the world seems lit from below as much as above. The papyrus along the margins stands black against it. A late boat crosses far downstream, a small dark shape drawing a long line of broken gold behind it. Herons flap slowly home to their roosts, black against the fire, and the sun touches the tops of the red western hills and rests there a moment, enormous and calm, and then slowly, slowly lets itself down behind them. The old people have a gentle way of speaking about that. They say the sun does not die when it goes down behind the western hills. They say it only goes to rest, that it sails on through the quiet hours below the world, through the cool dark, and gathers itself, and is born again fresh over the eastern desert in the morning, the way it has every single day since the first day of all. The west, they say, is only where the sun goes to sleep, and if the sun itself lies down each night behind the red hills and rises again renewed, then there is nothing to fear in lying down oneself and closing one's eyes and giving the dark its due. Sleep in this country is not a small thing. It is what the sun does. It is holy. The last red light drains from the water. The first stars prick out overhead. One, then a scatter, then more than a person could ever count. The air goes soft and blue and cool. Somewhere a girl is singing, low, an old song, half of words and half of drift, and it carries out over the darkening river and fades. Back walks home through the blue dusk, up the darkening lanes, past doorways where the small orange light of oil lamps is beginning to bloom. His family gathers for the evening meal in the last of the light. Bread again, and fish, and onions, and beer, eaten slowly in the cooling yard, while the stars thicken overhead. The lotus in its cup has closed for the night, its blue petals folded, sunk a little toward the water, sleeping. The children's talk grows slow and then stops. The gray cat, who vanished all afternoon on business of her own, reappears and winds once around Back's ankles and forgives him for the day. There is a smell to the evening in a river village that a person never forgets once they have known it. The cool coming off the water, the dust of the day settling, the smoke of the small cooking fires, sweet and low, the green breath of the marsh drifting up as the air cools, and, threading through it all, faint and clean, the closing lotus in its cup by the door. These are the smells of the day letting go, and the body knows them and answers them, the way it answers the dimming of the light and the first cool of the air, with a loosening, a settling, a quiet turning toward rest that needs no thinking about and cannot really be resisted and should not be. They sit late in the yard, the family in the blue dark, in no hurry to go up to the roof. The stars come out in their slow thousands. A neighbor's voice carries over the wall, low, and Back's wife answers it, and they talk across the dark about nothing in particular, the way neighbors do, their voices soft and unhurried in the cooling night. One of the children asks a question about the stars, why that one is brighter, where they go in the daytime. And Back gives the answer his father gave him, which is half true knowledge and half old story, and wholly satisfying to a sleepy child. And the child accepts it and yawns and leans a little heavier against his side. The cat has come back and folded herself into a lap. The lamp inside throws its small warm square of light out through the doorway onto the swept earth. There is nowhere any of them needs to be. There is nothing any of them needs to do. The day is done, and done well, and the doing of it has earned this hour of sitting quiet in the dark together, spending nothing, wanting nothing, simply being a family at the soft end of a good long day. And slowly, the way it always does, the talk runs down. The pauses grow longer. The children go heavy and quiet, one already asleep where she sits, and are gathered up. A last cup of water is drunk. The lamp is carried out, its flame pinched down, its small light gone, and the dark comes fully in, soft and warm and starlit, over the yard and the village and the river and the whole tired, contented, sleeping land. And so the evening goes on slowly, and the village settles toward the night. Lamp by lamp, door by door. There is nothing left to do and nothing left to follow. Only the stars coming out over the river, and a family growing quiet in the dark, and the day folding itself up as gently as the lotus folds. If your eyes are closing now, let them. You have come with him all the way to the end of the day, and the end of the day is for sleep. One by one, the lamps of the village go out, and the family climbs back up the short wooden ladder to the roof, to sleep again under the open sky. Back lies down last, on the woven reed mat, under the single length of linen, and lets out the long, slow breath that men have let out at that exact moment, in that exact way, for as long as there have been roofs and rivers, and the good tiredness that comes at the end of an honest day. Around him his family settles into sleep, his wife near, the children a warm tangle a little beyond, already gone, already dreaming, and the gray cat stepping delicately across the mat to claim her place against his ribs, turning once, twice, and folding herself down, and beginning at once without being asked to purr. Below the roofs, past the last houses, the river goes on in the dark. He can hear it, that low, endless, breathing sound. Water sliding past reeds, the small slap of the current on the mud, the great soft hush of it. It flowed all day while he fished and rested and mended and watched the sun go down. It will flow all night while he sleeps. It has never once stopped in all the long life of the world. And there is a deep comfort in that, in lying down beside something so patient and so old and so faithful, and letting it keep watch while you close your eyes. He does not count his worries because he leaves them down below, in the house, at the foot of the ladder. Up here there is only the mat and the linen and the warm small weight of the cat and the enormous quiet sky. He looks up at the stars, and here is the strange, kind thing, the thing worth taking down into sleep with you tonight. They are the same stars. Everything else in this story has long since gone quiet. The village, the boat, the net, the lotus, all of it folded softly away into time, 3,000 years deep, the way the lotus folds into the dark water at night. But the stars over that roof are the stars over you. That pale river of them spilled across the sky, backs Nile in the heavens, is spilled across your sky too, tonight, if you could see past the roof or the ceiling or the dark. The same slow wheel, the same quiet drift toward morning. Look up on some clear night, and you and a tired Egyptian fisherman are, for a moment, lying in the same wide room, under the same old sky, thinking the same small, grateful nothing before sleep. There is no clock in this world, and no calendar worth the name, not for a fisherman. There is only the river, and the sun, and the stars, and the slow, great wheel of the year they turn between them. The flood comes, and the fields drink, and the black soil is renewed, and the seed goes in, and the green comes up, and the grain is cut, and the river sinks low and clear, and then the flood comes again, over and over, year upon year, the same turning, and a man measures out his whole life by it. Not in numbered days, but in floods and harvests, in the coming and going of the birds, in the rising and setting of the stars he has known since childhood. It is a slower way of counting time, and a kinder one. It does not rush. It does not run out. It only turns and turns again, and carries everything gently around with it, the way the current carries a leaf, in no hurry to arrive anywhere, because there is nowhere in particular to arrive. And lying here now, at the end of one more turn of one more day, Bach feels the whole of it holding him, the river below, the stars above, the year wheeling slow around them both, and himself a small warm point of quiet in the middle of it all, held and carried and asked for nothing. Tomorrow will be much like today, and the day after much like tomorrow, and there is no dread in that thought, but only a deep and settling comfort, because the days are good, each one shaped like the last, each one full enough, And a life made of such days is a life a man can lie down inside of at night, the way he lies down inside his own house, and be at home, and sleep. His thoughts begin to loosen now, and unravel, the way yours may be unraveling, one folding softly into the next, the seams disappearing, the day coming apart into warm pieces that no longer need holding. The good catch this morning, the blue lotus in the cup, the creak of the shadoof, the sun laying itself down behind the red hills to sleep, and promising without a word to rise. This is how sleep is made in this country and every country. Not by trying, never by trying, but by lying still beside something patient and letting the warmth and the dark do the whole of the quiet work, while the one it is happening to simply breathes and lets go. The river whispers below. The cat purrs against his ribs. The stars lean by their slow fraction toward the west, toward the red hills, toward the place where the sun has gone to rest and will, in its own good time, rise. Tomorrow before dawn, in the last cool hour of the dark, a man will wake on a flat mud roof without being called, and climb down a ladder he knows by heart, and go down through the sleeping lanes to a river that has waited all night, and slide a small reed boat out onto the still gray water, under the fading stars. The lotus will be waiting to open. The fish will be keeping their old appointment. The whole slow, warm, patient day will be standing at the water's edge, the same good day, waiting to begin again. But that is hours away. Nothing is asked of anyone until then. Not of Bak, asleep now under the linen with the cat rising and falling on his breath. And not of you. The last lamp is long out. The village sleeps along the river like boats moored in a row. The cat purrs and slows and sleeps. And the river flows on, softly, past the reeds, under the same old stars. Sleep well.